Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Ciel Vaughan. I'm a coordinator for Share Screen Africa, and I'll be your host for the first installment of our Human-Wildlife Conflict series. And we are really, really excited to have two wonderful audiences today. We've got an audience from the Wildlife Tourism College from the Masai Mara in Kenya, and also the students joining from the Tshwane University of Technology in South Africa, which gives us about an audience of over 100 students, which is really fantastic. And we're so excited about that. So welcome everyone. And another very warm welcome as well to our speaker today, Gertrude Kirabo Namakula, who's the Senior Warden of Education and Awareness. Hi, Gertrude. So Gertrude is currently spending a lot of her time at the HQ, but she also completed a lot of field work looking at benefit sharing and human-wildlife conflict, but she now mostly focuses on community education and awareness. Well, welcome, Gertrude. Thank you so much for giving up your time and your information today to talk to our students, and we really look forward to your presentation.
To our dear students, you're most welcome to this, is it still morning or afternoon? Morning's presentation. I am Gertrude Kirabo Namakula, the Senior Warden, our Education and Awareness. I am here to take you through some of the interventions and how we are trying to handle human-wildlife conflicts here in Uganda. Like I told, currently I am at the headquarters, but previously I've been to the field, and while in the field, we've had a number of experiences interacting with wildlife, both in the protected area and outside the protected area. While also in the field, you not only handle human-wildlife conflict, but you're also interacting with a number of stakeholders, carrying out awareness and education, benefit sharing, but at the same time handling conflict. So this morning, we're going to see how it is being handled by the different parks. I may not mention many of the parks, but what I can say is that we've subdivided the parks into 7 conservation areas, and soon we will be having another conservation area upgraded from one of the mountainous regions to have just the savanna landscape having its own conservation area management program. My presentation is going to look at the introduction, basically where are we coming from and where are we at. Then look at the current conflict levels, the policy and legislations that are guiding us in handling human-wildlife conflict, the causes of human-wildlife conflict, some of the mitigation measures that we are using together with the local communities. We will also look at, as we discuss, we will also be mentioning some of the challenges we are facing with the interventions that we are using. And then where do we want to see ourselves with the different proposals or with the different interventions, so that we have not only a situation where we are only responding or firefighting, but we are looking at moving towards a situation that allows us to have communities benefiting from wildlife, and wildlife continues to stay wherever it is for the good of our people. The key components of human-wildlife conflict management. One is addressing the actual implementation of the mitigation methods and also the responses to the affected families and community. And then we also look at capacity development, where we aim at strengthening the capacity of all the stakeholders who are involved in human-wildlife conflict. Community 3, we look at community livelihoods, how we ensure that in as much as we are emphasizing the different methods of conflict management, but we are also looking at improving the livelihoods of the communities that are neighboring these protected areas. Then we have the component of human education and awareness. Then we recently introduced the compensation component. Then the research and monitoring, coordination and collaboration, then fundraising and financial management, then monitoring and evaluation of the entire program. So these are the key areas that we consider as we address human-wildlife conflict management. What is human-wildlife conflict? As we all know, as students of human-wildlife conflict, we all know that human-wildlife conflicts occur when there's wildlife interacting with the human, the communities on their land, and also vice versa, where the communities come into the protected areas and disturb the ecosystems in totality. But we are also looking at in the component of human-wildlife conflict, we're also looking at how we can address the needs of the community without conflicting with each other, or even if the wildlife still exists on their land, how do they continue to interact together without conflicting? Human-wildlife conflict management in Uganda has existed since the 1820s, where basically management of wildlife was through the traditional chiefs or kings. Here we are all aware that in our communities, the kind of resource management was governed by the local chiefs, and they had seasons when they are farming, and then the seasons when they go to hunt, and even the hunting that they were involved in was a regulated kind of hunting. You only go to pick resources which are enough to last you for a given season, and wildlife continuation was generally well managed and controlled. And in 1902 to 1923, we have the introduction of the sport hunting, where the chiefs would go for competition, or the communities would go for competition, but still in a regulated manner. Here in Uganda, we get to a level where hunting becomes restricted, because that's the time we get into this. There's time when they introduce the national parks and the wildlife reserves to manage, to help manage the wildlife on community land, but to benefit the different governments. This, of course, brought in much more of the regulation of how communities were to use particular areas, and also brought in some restrictions limiting them from accessing resources that they were used they used to access freely. In around the 1925 to 26, we have the colonial systems now controlling wildlife management. And here we have also the game department being introduced with a specific mandate to control human-wildlife conflict in the community land, also to ensure that they monitor access of resources by the local communities. And also we have the same game department was responsible for ensuring that if there are seasons for access, how do you get to those resources? And if it is upon control of populations, this is where the managers then were given ways of reducing the numbers, and they had the liberty to do hunting, they had the liberty to crop, they had the liberty to reduce or take decisions on how to mitigate the conflict on the community land by reducing the given numbers and give the proceeds back to the communities. In around 1996, around the 1970s, we experienced a total reduction in wildlife numbers on the community land, even within the protected reserves. And therefore, government takes a decision to ban hunting, complete ban of hunting in and access to many of the protected areas by the local communities and the different kind of institutions. And around that time, even management of wildlife had totally gone down. In 1996, we experienced a merger between Uganda National Parks, where we had a no-touch, and the game departments where we accepted utilization. So the two come together, and by the time the merger came, no hunting was permitted. And around that time, we experienced an increase in wildlife, an increase in wildlife, but again, an increase in wildlife conflicts. And in around 2001, we now start, of course, the discussion had already begun on how do we manage wildlife on community land to address the continuous outcry that had been presented to the government. We witnessed the introduction, the first time we are apart from what was existing then, this time we have a proper strategy on how to manage wildlife on both community land and inside the protected areas. And within 2001, we have one of our national parks given the mandate to address human-wildlife conflict and vermin control on community land across the country. Which here, the common animals, animals that we interface with as the most problematic to the communities are elephants, hippos, buffaloes, chimpanzees, and crocodiles. These are the ones that cause problems to the communities most. In the cat family, we have leopards, lions, civets, and sometimes jackals, though not to the extent that exists in our neighboring, our fellow East African countries. In as much as we have it, but we don't have it to that level where you have almost all every family within the cattle keeping community complaining about the cat family. Then the other problematic animal that we have is the baboons, the vervet monkeys, and bush pigs. And in our law, these three have been classified as vermins. They are vermins because they exist across the country. Their population numbers are not threatened. They are both in the protected areas and outside the protected areas. So management of the problem animals is entirely vested within Uganda Wildlife Authority, while the management of the vermins is vested within the local governments. Though, in as much as we've given management to the local governments, their capacity is still limited to address the vermin challenge. Still, the authority comes in handy to help the communities. So, what the rationale for the strategy, for the human wildlife management strategy, is that we aim at addressing human wildlife conflict so that the communities can continue to have their livelihoods protected and also their income improve. Then the strategy also looks at issues to do with how we integrate human wildlife conflict and generally wildlife management with the rest of the government programs, making sure that whatever they have planned for the communities they achieve their targets without us impacting it with our human wildlife conflict problems. Then the strategy also looks at capacity development in terms of staffing, in terms of skilling, in terms of equipment. And then it also targets areas where, because we are talking about protected areas and areas without areas with areas that are outside protected areas, but with big numbers of wildlife. So in terms of capacity, one of the strategies is looking at making sure that we have representation in most of the areas where the outcry has been reported. The strategy also looks at the different stakeholder engagements and the level of engagement and how the various stakeholders, their contribution to make sure that we have a holistic approach of managing the wildlife on protected and outside the protected areas. Then the strategy also looks at how resources are going to be mobilized. Is it entirely the resources are coming from Wildlife Authority, or government has a role to play, or we have also other stakeholders and programs to bring in these resources to help us address? I think we all are aware that institutions mandated with wildlife management, in terms of resource capacity, they have so many inadequacies. And then the strategy also looks at complementing the different government programs and making sure that the policies that are guiding us, both international and local policies, are addressing the needs of the people, the international needs, and there's also the national needs. In terms of policy and legislation, we look at a number of enabling laws and regulations to address that are advising or showing us the different ways on how to manage wildlife. And one of the key policies or the key laws that we focus on is one is the CITES. Then we have the Convention for Biodiversity, Biological Diversity, and then we have the transboundary conventions, and then the rest, as you may have studied within your training. We also look at the national laws, which is the Wildlife Act 2019, which guides us. Then we have the wetland, the national environment regulations. Then we have the wetland regulations, and then also the regulations from for managing water and land. Then we have also the local government Management Act, which also guides us, because we are looking at the communities, we are looking at the livelihood and land use management. So those different laws help us to give us counsel and guidance on how to address human-wildlife conflict. Then we have the wildlife policy, which is looking at the different interventions, how to share information, how to generate funds, how to coordinate with the different stakeholders. We recently just received during in 2019, we also received the wildlife compensation regulations approved within the Wildlife Act. And currently we have the 2022 wildlife compensation regulation to help us mitigate the conflict with the politicians and the local communities that are affected by wildlife. Then we also have other enabling regulations that help us to address collaborative management. And in this, we basically look and address issues to do with resource access and how the different communities can access benefits. The next slide is showing us the nature of conflicts that exist in the communities. On one side, you can see how elephants have entered into a banana plantation. Sometimes it can be a maize field, clearly cleared by elephants, cleared by, mostly it is elephants that do massive clearance. Then the upper one is showing you what happens to when the cats get into a kraal, and the kind of destruction the communities face. So we have issues to do with the fishermen facing crocodiles and hippos. Then on land we have elephants, mainly with buffaloes, and the vermins as a challenge. What is causing the human-wildlife conflict? We have a number of causes, and one, as you may be seeing it on your slide, we have one of our biggest challenge is increase in human population. We have many areas that have been virgin, not settled at all, and those pristine areas that were easily settled with wildlife are now being turned into charcoal burning areas. They are being turned into farm areas, and as they settle into these areas, many of them are closer to the protected areas, and the difference between the human settled areas and those that are occupied by wildlife, sometimes there are no barriers, and the scenario is that elephants just move continuously because they are used to these territories. They've been occupying them for years, and as people move in, their crops are destroyed completely. Then we have an issue to do with mindset change, because one, they believe wildlife is free, they can access it at any time, and the land is free, so they have the liberty to use that land the way they wish. We also, the other thing that causes conflict is low tolerance for wildlife existing on community land. They feel they can kill it at any one time, and as that interaction comes in, conflict arises in terms of injuries, in terms of death. Then we have an increase, an upsurge in illegal activities. Charcoal burning is on the rise. Poaching is on the rise. Deforestation right now we have communities converting the forests into sugarcane plantations. So the primates that have existed in those forests have nowhere to stay. They are now moving into areas that were not occupied, or that as they continue moving from their original homesteads into trying to connect to the surviving forest, the conflict arises. Then we have limited or inadequate benefits for the communities in some of the areas where we have these challenges. We have limited areas that can act as buffer zone or migratory corridors. Climate change is a big issue right now. Then we also have limited or delayed response by ourselves in most of the areas where we have these conflicts. They are not accessible at all. And then in other places, you find that the institution has no capacity in terms of vehicles or human staff to go and respond to the outcry of the people. Then we have issues to do with awareness about the animal behavior, about how to handle, what to do when a conflict arises. And in many of these cases, we have, yes, the communities may have had access to the information, but politicians don't. So you have a mix-up of information where you find, for instance, there's a community where we have mineral and energy development ministry conducting mineral explorations. At the same time, that same location suffers with human-wildlife conflict. And at the same time, they also have their own traditional conflicts between let me see, raiders and the crop farmers. So in trying to address issues to do with human-wildlife conflict, you're mistaken that you're here to take somebody's land other than addressing the human-wildlife conflict, the challenge that is at the site. Then we also have sometimes the interventions that are on the ground are not acceptable to the communities that you're trying to help. Then the other thing is that, of course, the areas that were originally meant to help in environmental conservation, and now the landowners want them, and there are others who are claiming a conflict over land because everyone wants to own land, and the moment they get to know that there are minerals in that land, then people come in and take over the land. So this is a clear example of what we face. This slide shows a forest. This is in Bwindi protected, Bwindi impenetrable forest, which is a national park in the south. On one side, you're seeing how agriculture is taking place, and on the other side, we have the forest. The common challenge here is chimpanzees and elephants coming out to attack the community crops, but at the same time, the communities need resources right into the forest. So we have poaching and and resource access. But it does not stop at only resource access, but also claiming extra land because this is not enough or it's not productive enough. Then the other causes that are affecting us is, of course, we have invasive plants taking over many of the protected areas, and therefore the food availability for many of these grazers is taken over and it's not palatable enough. So they find ease by eating the maize or the cassava or the potatoes from the community land other than eating something which is unpalatable. And because of climate change, of course, there are issues to do with water shortages, and communities have water sources on their land. So here we have a key scenario of how population is increasing. You see that at around the 1950s, we were having 10 million people, but right now we anticipate that in 2024, our population might be even more than 40 million. Deforestation, the impact of deforestation and population increase. You can see on this slide, we are showing that the first, unfortunately, I don't know how, if you see the first map, the forest cover is a bit thicker than the last map in the corner. So you can see the gradual changes that are taking place. And this map is up to 2015. So currently, the forest cover should be even much less than what we have here. And as they continue converting these lands for crop fields, the demand for land from protected areas is increasing as well. The next slide shows you the elephant ranging patterns. In 1929, elephants were all over the country. But if you look at the current scenario in 2016, we are restricting the elephants only to the protected areas. So the map which is showing 2016 is these are where the actual protected areas where elephants are supposed to be restricted to. But when you look at the next slide, you'll see that elephants cannot, as much as we've tried to change and try to take over their territories, it has not stopped the elephants from continuing with their ravaging. Now, the next map shows us how the areas that are affected by human-wildlife conflict. Here we have, remember in the first slide, we said we have wildlife both in the community and in the protected areas. So the green area shows you the protected areas, and then the pink areas, these are areas that are still having wildlife on the community land. Statistically, we've given you just a sample. The information is up to 2018. We've not done our update of the current scenario, but in Lake Mburo, you can the first on the table, the first protected area is Lake Mburo. You can see in 2017 they had more problem and more cases reported, and this is much of a cattle corridor area. So these kind of statistics are for the cat family, and compared to Kidepo, which is also a savanna land, you see in 2018 their challenge has increased to 408, while Queen Elizabeth, which is purely Queen Elizabeth, which has different kind of ecosystems. It has forests and both the savanna grasslands. Their cases are higher by 500, and they have a record of 590 in 2018. So we can see that as population increases, also the conflict has increased. This is the country situation, seeing that from 2008, the cases were around 1,500, but this does not mean that this scenario shows that either this was the state on the ground or we had no information available at that time to update. So that just the available information gives you a simple scenario of at what state we were at and where we've moved from 2008 to 2018. The annual report for elephants compared to the crocodile scenario, we have Queen Elizabeth reporting in as the most affected with elephant conflicts compared to Bwindi, which has only 46 cases recorded in 2018 alone. While the crocodile scenario, we have the cases in 2012 increasing. In 2014, those that were reported in reduced to 11. Then, yeah, so the actions taken, we see our response increasing much more in 2012 compared to 2008, and then 2017 also witnessed some minimal responses from us. But this shows you that compared to elephants and crocodiles, the elephant conflict is more on our side compared to the other animal cases. What kind of interventions are we using at the moment? We are not different from what you're using in your countries. We have guarding, scare shooting, trenches. We are also experimenting with crop fields, firefighting, and electric fencing, which is newly introduced. So the picture here we have is some of the trenches that we are using to deter elephants. They are problematic on one hand, though they are helpful also on the other hand. The biggest challenge we have with the trenches is that one, they aid in poaching. Two, the maintenance is a challenge, and they are also costly in terms of implementation. The elephants, at introduction, the elephants have, when we first introduced them, we were able to reduce the conflict by let's say 50% for those parks that are implementing them. But the subsequent years, because of not implementing proper maintenance and also the issues to do with not covering the entire area that was under conflict, we found ourselves pushing, as you go to scare the elephants, you would still push the elephants through the trenches to push them back into the park. So what we've had to do is here is instead of having one single intervention of the trench, you also have the introduction of the beehives, you have the introduction of the live fences to complement the trench. This is a sample of the live fences that we are using in some of the areas. This live fence is a Mauritius thorn fence, or the English name is Mauritius thorn, but I forget the scientific name. This the live fence helps us to address issues to do with primates and elephants as well. As long as they are well maintained, the success level is at 70%. But if they are not well maintained, they are evasive, then at the same time, with time, the animals have access, and also the poachers are using them to trap wildlife for their advantage. On the other side, you see where these live fences exist, the farmers are using their integrated beekeeping, which is helpful in terms of chasing the elephants, but at the same time improving a livelihood for the communities. The other example of the problem animal that we have is the crocodiles. Here we sensitize the communities on how to know when crocodiles are within their areas, what things they are supposed to look out for, to safeguard themselves. As we continue to receive their outcry, the organization has had to do capacity building by training a specialized unit which responds to the crocodile and the reptile, the crocodile and the reptile challenge. So we can conduct the capture, translocate, and where we translocate them, we ensure that those places, because sometimes the crocodile might have eaten and have developed a habit of hitting human beings. So what we do is that we take them back to the protected areas where we have less human interaction, or we take them to the crocodile farmers for us to be able to promote another level of when they are taken, they are taken to the crocodile farmers, we have we are able to one, improve the numbers of those that can be traded. We are able to restock where the parks have waters that are not accessible by the communities, but the numbers there can improve on the numbers of crocodiles within the protected areas. But at the same time, the farmers are able, they have their license to do the trading in terms of skin, in terms of meat, and also they also given a class E, which is education, to be able to promote tourism within those farm areas. Now, when it comes to the communities, we also agree with them, and we have areas where they can have access to water without facing the the conflict. But as we all know, with the current climate change challenge, many of these holding areas where the communities are supposed to be fetching water and maybe swimming and protecting them from the crocodiles, as the water levels increase, these protective barriers are not working at all. Some of them are submerged in water and the conflict continues. Fishermen, we also have an issue with the fishermen fishing within the hippo infested areas and crocodile infested areas. We know that where hippos are, their fish is at its highest. So when it comes to the fishermen, they are fishing within the protected area or breeding zones. So what normally happens is that those communities that are staying at the borders of the lakes, hippos, we have hippos not only on the big lakes, but also in the wetlands and the main rivers. So one of the interventions we are using is the demo here shows you the hippo fence, where we've tried to put up as demonstrated, one on the lower level. You see how the fence looks like before the planting season, and then the upper one shows you how it is helping out during the planting season. Where we can, we try to do hippo cropping, but this is not sustainable at all. The fisheries, we work with the fisheries department to ensure that they emphasize the protection of the breeding zones to try and minimize the conflict. The lower one is a buffalo fence in one of our parks in Mugahinga. This buffalo fence is a fence made up of just stones, prohibiting buffaloes from coming out into the communities to graze on the Irish potatoes. But at the same time, it also helps us because it acts as a boundary marker. The other interventions that we are utilizing are the electric fences. These ones are not say much because in your places there, you have better fences than we have. So this is a newly adopted method. So far, so good. Where we have experimented it, the communities are able to harvest. But the challenge is that we are grappling with poachers. They still go through these fences, and then the other thing is that the areas covered so far are not large enough. So elephants are moving along the fence, and then they get to the communities and do their havoc. We it's just 2 years now when we started experimenting it, but at least it has brought in some peace in some of the communities where it is established. The above intervention is an example of a trap that helps to trap the baboons from the fields that are closer to the forests. The other strategy we're using to respond to human-wildlife conflicts, of course, is the involvement of the communities. Several meetings are held with the communities to agree which intervention that can be applicable for their case. And then we've also had in many of our parks, communities have accepted to guard the crop fields. They have accepted to guard the crop fields where our rangers are not. Then in return, we make sure that these very volunteers, these are volunteer workers, but of course, as you all know, no one can do any volunteer work without anything in return they need something that will motivate them to continue doing the work. So basically what the organization and what the NGOs have done is that these community volunteers are given projects. We don't pay them cash direct, but they are given projects which can enable them have gained some income and also improve their own personal livelihoods. And in return, they come to help the communities to guard the gardens in the night. Currently, the other option that we are looking at is instead of having scattered gardens across the communities, for the scouts and the rangers to easily guard the fields, we've currently adopted a system of block farming so that we are able to respond effectively. It is still being negotiated because some are in agreement, others are not in agreement because of the land conflicts, where they believe that if they do not dig within their own lands, then some strategists will come and take over their land. Under collaborative management, the regulation allows us to utilize wildlife on the community land within and also within the protected area. So where we've had conflicts of access and there are resources that are heavily demanded by the communities, we enter into agreement with the communities and agree to access some resources like firewood, fish, medicine, and water on given days. And then that which they have accessed, they are able to add value to it. Like right now, we have people who are trading in local medicine, local herbs. These upon access, or they can come and get seed, and then they go and plant the same on their land, and then there they will be able to add value, sell it, and earn an income from it. We have management associations and committees that govern this access of resources, whether it is on community land or in the protected areas. These associations help them to interact with the different institutions, make decisions in terms of access, in terms of benefit sharing. At the same time, they also help us in terms of governance and response to human-wildlife conflict. We have limited corridors that still exist. And in some of these corridors, we are not only looking at utilizing those areas to ease the movement of wildlife, but at the same time, we are looking at moving towards the conservancy model, where the wildlife within those areas, the communities can access them, and they are able to promote tourism, they are able to do sport hunting, and they are able to do farming at the same time. And the proceeds that come out of this, they are utilized within the communities to address the different needs that they have. We also have a number of eco-lodges that have been developed for the communities, so that they do not only look at the conflict alone, but they look at they have a mindset change, where you have you look at, yes, the proceeds that are coming out of agriculture might not be as equal as to those that are being accessed in the ecotourism programs, just like it is in your locations. Some of the benefits that we have witnessed in the collaborative management program, one under sport hunting, the sport hunting program, the communities have been able to generate over 17 billion out of sport hunting. Here, sport hunting, we only look at the adult male that are no longer useful to the society, useful in the herd, but can be converted for the benefit of the communities. And in return, these resources, the community takes almost. Hunting took place on the landowners, on the land that is owned by an individual. That individual will get around 40% of that proceed that has been released, and then 45% goes to the general community for planning purposes, for their own livelihood planning purposes, to benefit the entire community, because we believe that before the wildlife came on your land, it should have done havoc on other people's land also. So they have 45% goes to the community, general community, and then 40 goes to an individual if you have, that is on areas with land titles. If you belong to a community that is communal, then the entire 85% goes to now the association to be able to address the community needs as a whole. Then we have those with community enough land, and they're able to do farming. They're able to do to put up wildlife centers. Then we sign agreements with them and add value to the wildlife on their land. As an organization, we have an obligation to put away 20% of the revenue that is accumulated at the gates, and this is declared to the parishes that are bordering the protected areas as a payback for the damages that have been accrued out of wildlife, but at the same time demonstrate to them that wildlife has value. So over 18 billion worth of projects have been implemented within those communities that have access to this resource. We are also experimenting with different species. Those that are able to do wildlife farming. So far, we have over 500 farming enterprises in crocodile, and then there are others that are experimenting with butterflies, with snakes, and the rest of the wildlife. In here, we have also different groups that are able to that have forests on their land, that have ample land that can host education centers. They are also allocating we've signed agreements with different farms and different communities, and they are conducting ecotourism on their land and earning revenue out of them. So that which they have earned, within their associations, they are able to plan for it and utilize it for whatever activities that they can. Some of the buffer zone, buffer crops that we are experimenting with is in some areas we are using tea, others are using onions, tobacco. We have in other places they are doing chia nut is it shea nut, and then the others they're venturing into sunflower, others are venturing into beekeeping, and so on and so forth, for as alternatives to the challenges they have. Under monitoring and research, we realize that much of the animals that are reported, we don't have enough information. In as much as we have rangers doing patrols and gathering information, we've had to adopt other mechanisms to try and understand the home ranges of some of these animals. In Kidepo landscape, we have Kidepo borders with Sudan and Kenya, and we have a feel that sometimes elephants move from Uganda to Kenya and Sudan. So the kind of conflict that exists is a kind of a transboundary one, but even within the local communities themselves, the areas that are protected, like right now we have a wildlife corridor, but if you go on the ground to trace the challenge of elephant movements, these elephants are beyond the corridor. They are disturbing communities that are even far beyond the corridor. And the safety of these elephants is not known. So what we've had to do within the human wildlife conflict management, we've had to integrate the use of technology to help us determine the movement of the elephants, to understand the seasons, and also to understand the different home ranges where we have had several outcries. We've had elephants moving from Kidepo, going to the community, and then down into one of there are several reserves that are on the east. So when, instead of us giving excuses, continuous excuses, but right now we are able to know that, yes, when they say elephants are coming in from Kenya, are they sincerely coming in from Kenya, or they are the ones that we have within our localities? So this they use the monitoring and the monitoring of wildlife. We've introduced camera traps. We've introduced the use of drones, use of satellite collars for the lions, for elephants, for birds, and currently we are also experimenting on the giraffes to know exactly how far these animals can go and what kind of damage they cause within the areas that they go to. How safe are they, and what are they looking for? The elephant collars, unfortunately, I wish I had posted them up. We've been able to tell they are around, we collared around 12 different groups of elephants. But of the 12 that we have collared, one group is resident in the park. The other 11 groups are 90% of the time in the community land. I hope
Gertrude. Hi, Gertrude. Sorry, we are slightly running out of time a little bit, and I wondered whether we could maybe just pause your presentation here and go to some questions and answers. We do only have 10 minutes left, and I know the students would really like the opportunity to ask some questions. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for that fascinating presentation. As we all know, there are lots of instances of human-wildlife conflict across Africa, and everybody deals with it in different ways, and it's really great that we can all learn from each other. So thank you so much for that. So I'll go now to our primary audiences. Perhaps we could start with Dr. Ogilvie from TUT and see if there are any questions there from the students.
My students are on their way. I'm just going to swing my camera. There's a few. Okay. They're going to introduce themselves and then they will ask.
Good morning, ma'am. I wanted to ask a question. My name is Luke from TUT. I wanted to ask a question on the mountain gorillas in Virangwa. I wanted to know, what are the Ugandan government doing to address the issues of poaching, mining, and deforestation that these critically endangered animals are facing currently?
When it comes to poaching, we, of course, within the protected areas, we have the law enforcement department, which addresses poaching. So there are constant patrols that are being carried out within the different national parks and reserves. And as soon as somebody is arrested, they are taken to the courts of law for charge. But the challenge we have now is many of the poachers are high-tech. Even when we try to introduce the satellite monitoring for poachers, right now what we are experiencing is that the groups come in, if we don't have a quick response, even if you monitor and you say you go and arrest them from their communities, the issue is that sometimes they come in with hoods. So you can't tell exactly who is involved in, when those gangs start using the hoods, you can't tell which community has come in. But what happens is that once you're arrested, you're taken to the courts of law. And the other challenge we have is that with the law enforcement department, they are having a challenge with human rights. Previously, we could easily arrest, discipline the person on site so that they don't come back again. But now you can't discipline them. So once you have been arrested, you take the person clean inside the courts of law. And unfortunately, as soon as they are released, they still come back to the game because of the lucrative proceeds that come out of that poaching. In terms of deforestation, the Wildlife Authority works hand in hand with the forest sector to combat the deforestation and the charcoal burning. But in return, we also have plantations, artificial plantations being implemented by the forest department to address the encroachment on the forest. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Gertrude. Just in the interest of time, I'm thinking, Dr. Ogilvie, maybe we could move over to the Wildlife Tourism College and just check whether there's a question there. Peterson and Gertrude Seeler, do you have any questions on your end?
My name is Wycliffe, and my question is this: how does human-wildlife conflicts affect wildlife?
I think that's a fairly broad question there, Gertrude. I don't know whether you'd be able to summarize quickly in time.
He was asking, how does human-wildlife conflict affect wildlife, isn't it?
Yes.
One, of course, we have the people who are being affected. When the wildlife team does not respond effectively, they take it out on the wildlife. There's retaliatory killing, there's poison, sometimes they do poisoning. We've had cases where they've done pits in the forest, and once the elephants get into the pathways where they enter into the communities, they fall into the pits. In other places, we've had cases where we've had the cattle keepers poisoning the carcasses, and that carcass which has been poisoned is killing the prey birds, kills the hyenas, kills the lions. So you see something that was done by one lion, but is affecting the entire pride, affecting the prey birds, the the prey birds plus the hyenas and any other thing that feeds on that carcass. Of course, when it comes to the politicians are quick to blame the authority about the response and instigating the communities to beat up the wildlife staff the moment they appear into the community land. So these are some of the challenges that we have.
Wow, thank you for that, Gertrude. Okay, so unfortunately we have run out of time. We've taken a lot of everyone's time. I know that we wish we had some more time for discussion because obviously human-wildlife conflict is such a big issue. It's very prominent and there are hours and hours of the day that we could use to discuss it. And I'd like to say a massive thank you to our wonderful audiences today, China University of Technology, the Wildlife Tourism College. Thank you to Dr. Ogilvie, to Peterson, to Gertrude Sieler. Thank you so much, Gertrude, for giving up your time. It's really clear that you guys are doing some amazing work and dealing with some very difficult issues. But it was fascinating to learn all about them.